Welcome to How to Avoid a Mr. H. I'm in love with an ego. I'm Deandra, also known as Jardín, on all music platforms. And, well, let's discuss, let's heal. So, I really do feel that you avoid a Mr. H, which is my code name for all the narcissists that, like my dad, have just swept through my life because my dad was a narcissist. He was abusive. And the thing about narcissism is that it, by all means, is a mental illness. It's a psychological disorder. They suffer from chronic depression, chronic anxiety. I often joke like nobody has more anxiety than Donald Trump, right? And my dad, I say it a lot throughout episodes. He had no capacity to love. He was an empty soul. And I don't necessarily say that to insult him. I say that because that was his nature, which is why he enjoyed kind of spreading mental illness, breaking women down, causing pain, avoiding consequences, committing crimes. He liked to hurt people and kind of be the basically the snake in Eden, right? What an honor to have made someone's humanity fall. And when you say those things, it sounds like this is a bad person, and he is, but, or was, but it's also like that's who they are. And it's not, you don't necessarily need to judge someone or save someone to know that you should avoid them and not be harmed by them. And I think like it's just how it is. There's sociopaths, there's psychopaths. And I think we live in a world where it's just really hard to decipher how to approach other people's villainy, especially if it's towards you, because consequences I have found I paid more consequences for my father's actions than he ever could. And that's what he wanted. That's what he loved. That's what he plotted. And as a human being, it's so easy to judge that person as, from this perspective of God and morals and tear him down. But if that's who he was, my job is to figure out who I am despite that, because of that, elevating from that. If that makes any sense. Like I'm not here to throw tomatoes at the guy, but I do have to say what tomatoes he was carrying, right? And I really try to elaborate that because um I wrote the song I'm in love with ego. Please support it. And I was really thinking about that as I process daddy recovery, and I have the tendency to think of the stories and write a billion stories and then like fall off because I'm always writing. And it's very difficult for my beautiful typing hands to catch up to my brain. And I wanted How to Avoid a Mr. H to be these very free thought, as you could see, rambling episodes on the things that I've learned. And I wrote I'm in love with an ego, so support Hardin, um, because I really do feel when I look back at so many of the relationships in my life, beyond gender, but mostly men, in the form of bosses and friends and lovers and even icons, right? I chose people who embraced I chose people not only symbolized my dad, but also embraced parts of me that I didn't embrace or that were like him. My dad was very, very ambitious, very, very hardworking. His downfall was that, he liked hurting people. He liked committing crime. He liked being sneaky. He liked being deviant. He liked breaking people down. And that's a part of his mental health, right? That's a part of his trauma. And I think what I always wanted to avoid was what I saw within my father was that if you define your life as just, I was this traumatized child that then became, a lost adult. It's this weird thing that he did that I see a lot of people do and kind of explains why Trump won in some ways is this concept of just because I'm traumatized doesn't mean I'm traumatizing, right? And it's this disconnect we have of defining ourselves according to our pain and genuinely thinking that is why we're not painful. There's no way I've hurt someone. I I've been hurt. And we've all said that at one point. We've all been guilty. And I think that was one of the reasons my father became so dangerous and unsafe, especially for me, because he would never admit he was the very darkness he swore damaged him. He would never admit that he became the very monster that he swore terrorized him. And not only did he not want to admit he became that, but he liked it. He enjoyed it. And that's why I'm saying, we have people like Trump who locked kids in cages and thought that was great. There's something inherently wrong. My father loved to make me cry. There's something inherently wrong with somebody who defines joy according to how they destroy others, according to how they harm them, according to how they steal from them, according to how they threaten them, according to how they're going to try to make sure that this victim is silenced or dead. And that's what I've always felt with my dad, that danger. And I, so when I say, he had no capacity to love, all that stuff, I don't mean it. It's so weird because I don't feel like I'm saying it from a place of judgment. I'm saying it from a place of truth. I'm saying that from a place of kind of, there's just no way. If you always are feeling scared that people will discover the truth, will discover your crimes, will discover your sin, you're never resting. You're never at peace. You're never fully embracing the other person because you do have to hold them back. You do have to have a guard. You do have to protect this other world. And it's something that I've spoken about in prior episodes, like separate but unequal, right? And that ability of you always have to live in separation. You always have to be compartmentalizing and focusing on the lies you tell, the crimes you've hidden, the sins you're committing. The you can push. The thing about being an abuser is that there are good times. You stay in abuse because there is a little fun. It's not just doom and gloom. And unfortunately, by the time it does become doom or gloom, you're either in severe danger, or if you're lucky enough, you're leaving the situation, but you're leaving it so damaged from all the abuse that it's going to take years to heal. It's going to take a process. It's going to take kind of this reckoning with yourself of how could I have allowed that, which is something that I'm going through right now. And I think that when I look back at a lot of my relationships, I'm ambitious, I'm hardworking. My dad was too. He may have been a criminal and a con man, but he was hardworking. And I think that was my father's ability to divide himself between the public figure that just looked like a guy who really wanted to do right and do justice versus the actual guy that wanted to commit injustice. Um, that kind of two-facedness, I think, attracted me to a lot of men who were able to embrace the public with such, I think, I don't know if there's a word, but it's my word, bombacity, such a level of this is who I am. I am a star and I want riches. I want fame. I am an artist, and it doesn't matter if I hit only flat notes and steal other people's work like Liam the producer. It's this kind of ownership of yourself and the parts of you that whether or not you are them, you dream of them, that I found superbly endearing. And it was something I was thinking about in the past few days. I really do fall in love with people's ego. I fall in love with the parts of them that that whether or not they are actually big, the fact that they embrace it and make it appear so. I was fascinated by Liam's ability to say he was an artist even though he was a bad one, to say that he was a songwriter, even though he was a bad one, and to understand that if you brand absolute ish like it is a garden of flowers. People will go and smell it. People will go and take pictures by it. And who knows, they might even act like they don't smell the ish. And I just, my father's abuse cut off this part of me that I was so proud of. And you can hear it in an episode of Great Secretary where me and Nina, we have always, our expression of love is in service. When we are in love with someone or we really like someone, we show up for them. She was frustrated because she's trying to cut off that side of herself. And within weeks of knowing this new potential love interest, she scheduled his business for a year. Like he wanted to set up a vacation, which I thought, whoa, all right, we're going on a vacation. Something's happening here. Hope he paid. Um, and he was like, this is my schedule for the year. She was like, oh, this is a hot mess. And she's like reorganizing. He was like, oh my God, thank you. The way, because she's good at that. She's creative and corporate and just really good at structuring inspiration in ways that a lot of the men that she has met at least, have not been able to. And she's always kind of like me, been stuck in the Jackie O. I support our president. I'll stand by his side. And it's like, I would like, you know, to be the president minus the assassination attempt. I would like to be the JFK. I would like to be the lead. I'd like to, hang out with Marilyn. Um, but it's kind of like all the greatness of you is just a given to them, and they use you. And they think, well, thank you for giving it to me. I don't have to be reciprocal. I don't have to even be that grateful. You chose to give it to me, and it's up to me to see it as a sign of love. And that's really endangering for people that actually want to fall in love. And I think that that ability to be ungrateful, that ability to be so cutthroat and cut off, that ability to really think you are a superstar if you can't even do your own calendar is so oddly attractive. Because I think the burden of being somebody that is so sweet and so generous and loving is that the world wishes it was that, tries to reshape itself as that, and consistently finds it's not that. And when you genuinely are a good human being, it feels hard to get better because so many people are barely good. It feels hard to get better because the better you get, the more you might lose. And it feels hard to get better because people confuse good for perfect. And that was one of the ways my father abused me. He consistently tried to make it as I'm not perfect versus how abominable he was in his nature and in his cruelty towards human beings, the unfortunate victim he was picking, whether it was a sister, a mom, a daughter, my mom, whoever else, whatever else woman was in his life at the time, whether we knew about it or not, somebody was getting hurt by him, and it was usually female. Um, yeah, oof, that's a deep thought. That's something that I've definitely processed throughout this. Um, and I guess what attracted me to narcissists, when I say I'm in love with an ego, and what I liked about their ego was that ability to kind of shine without light, to look big without even deserving it or measuring up, and having this ability to cut people off the minute they saw that you weren't that big or that you were not special. You're just a really good liar, a really good thief, like all the exes I've mentioned. I always mention Liam a lot because I think he was one of the more recent ones and the one of the more painful ones because of my own ego. I have always wanted to become a better person, and I really made that outside of myself. I just thought, I want to be kinder to this world. I want to be softer and I want to find more love. And yet I never started the inner work and the general belief that you need to do that for yourself in order to even think you could do that more for the world. And then when you're naturally kind, there's just this feeling of, I always could sing, I always could act, I always was funny, I always was kind. So I had, my family was very kind of, the minute we identify you and this is your identity. I was a sweet funny kid that could sing and act. And if I didn't excel at something, I was told don't approach it. I loved painting, and they all said I sucked, so I never got a paintbrush. I love playing sports. Absolutely terrible. I acknowledge it. And whenever we would have like these family sports events like bowling, I was sad. Like they would get me some nachos and they were always calling me fat. So I knew I was really bad because they would get me some nachos and then go play. There was this concept of if you don't excel, you don't enjoy. And with a lot of my exes, they didn't excel, but they did enjoy. They weren't talented, they weren't good, they weren't that smart, but they were so good at looking at it like it and then owning it, that me, who actually was talented and special and kind and smart, I just felt fascinated by them. Because even though my family thought I excelled in terms of morals and musicality, let's say, they still crushed me. They still bullied me and they still made me aim for a level of perfection that we're just not here on this earth to reach. I don't think you're on earth to be perfection. I think you're here to perfect you. There's just, why would I, if I'm so great, why would I be on an earth that is not only filled with such wonderful things like love and happiness, but also sadness and suffering? My life is a spectrum of both, and it's up to me to decide where I tilt in terms of essence and morality. Will I become a good person despite the bad? Will I just keel to all my demons like my dad did? And I think what I advise everybody that's listening to this, because yes, Daddy Recovery is about mostly my male dynamics and how they frame my paternal dynamics. But I think it's at the core, beyond gender and sexuality and all that stuff, class, religion. I think if you are a victim of trauma and abuse, especially in the form of a father like myself, or a parent, or just a figure in your life that you swore was going to love and guide you, and showed up as if they were just to keep on making you even abandon yourself, this podcast is for you. And what I warn people in avoiding a Mr. H is to have a real analysis whether you are actually in love with who this person is, or who they are pretending to be, that you wish you could pretend to be too. You could fall in love with a person who embraces the parts of you you deny. You could fall in love with a person who allows themselves to be when you don't. Every person that I fell in love with, forever tyrannical and toxic they could be cry from the top of the hills, and most of them did, because that's a good abusive manipulative tactic, how traumatized they were by another person in another place. They could do that, but at the end of the day, for all their pain, they still oddly prospered, especially materially, especially in terms of community. And there's something about that that's fascinating and attractive, particularly because of the very same reasons I said in the beginning. We do live in a world that is very superficial, that may want to be good, but it sure doesn't work to get better. And it's sad that a person who looks kind might very well prosper, and will probably prosper more than a person who actually is. And that ability to, my journey is trying to match image with essence. I am kind, so let me learn how to brand it. I am loving, so let me learn how to sell it and make it look like me, so that the people who are attracted to me by image, when they actually open the door, they see there's an even cooler essence. Because unfortunately, we do live in this world of branding, and egos understand that in a way that, again, is fascinating, but it's also foundational. You know, like it's just like when I think of Jesus, I'm like, damn, he was good at branding. Because when you really think about it, I mean, he was only, unfortunately for him, he only had from 30 to 33 to actually get his message out, because we were done with him. Because there's nothing, often what happens, I feel, is that when you tell good people they need to get better, they just sink, because it's hard to be good, especially when evil just has to get worse. That was what always was so dangerous about my dad, especially in talking to him. He was just planning on how to get worse. If you caught him in a lie, he just had to lie more. If you caught him stealing, he just had to silence you or steal in another way. It was always like, "And another one and another one." Whereas the minute you decide to be a good person, you have to get better. And you have to learn that. I think for me, I'm a creator and I date a lot of destroyers. I date men, and I let myself be led by men that are really good at taking ideas. And because they're men, and because they're charming, or they're just really good liars, they're going to find a way to make that idea real, that is easier or more flashy, compared to me, that I have to actually work behind my ideas. I have to actually be virtuous and have things like patience and strength, because I'm not only going to have resistance as a woman, I'm going to have resistance as a human being that is good, that actually does trust words. You tell me you're kind and you say something sweet, I'm going to think you're sweet, until I realize you stabbed me in the back and you were planning to do that the whole time. And what I fear with a lot of people who are abuse victims like myself is just, it's okay to admire someone's ego, but make sure that it's just not you trying to stroke your own. Nobody can be anything that you can't be, especially for yourself. And I have fallen for a lot of people in every way, because I wanted them to. I spent so much of my childhood feeling I had to save my dad. I had to comfort him, only to discover he was sabotaging me with happiness. Like he was happily sabotaging me. That I really went into the world trying to find somebody that actually helped me, that actually loved me, that put me first, or that at least, one of the tragedies of being abused by a parent is that not only did they not love you, but they didn't want you to love yourself. Because that's how abuse works. I have to cut you off from you so that you become this like leech I love to smack on me. And I think ultimately, my one of the tragic lessons I've had to learn is that no one is going to save me, and it sucks. It sucks because I did have people who sabotaged me from the very beginning of my life. I always say you need another person to hurt you, but you only need you to heal you. And despite knowing that, it has been incredibly hard accepting that, because I didn't have a childhood, in part because of the dad I had. And that, whew, that broke me. So check out daddyrecovery.com. Please, 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 just don't go for the ego without knowing whether or not you are actually going for you. All right.